Morning. My name is Tyshara Coggins. I'm from the New Britain office, Department of Social Services, and I work in long-term care. And then we have with us Carlene Mason, who's from the Waterbury office, and we're here to present on long-term care and Husky C, to give you a little bit of background information on what the programs are and basically what it entails, requirements, things of that nature. So we'll get started. So what is Husky C? Husky C, the types of programs are, there's Medicaid assistance for the aged, blind, and disabled, Medicaid for employees with disabilities, and long-term services and supports. That's basically the main blankets that it's broken up into. And who is eligible for Husky C? Like we said earlier, aged or elderly, so it's usually people who are 65 and older. You can be legally blind. Medicaid for employees with disabilities, those are between the ages of 19 and 64 and disabled. And you need to have found to have a disability by Social Security Administration or by the DSS through Colonial Cooperative Care. That's basically a third party that we have, that we use, where you can actually get a disability determination for that. So long-term service support, I know this is a lot, this is deep, but here's the definition. A few years back, they changed it from, it used to maybe called convalescent unit or long-term care or things of that nature, but we changed the name to basically encompass more of a broad range of medical and personal care assistance. Because it's not just being in a nursing home. There's so many things that this program encompasses that why they decided to change the name. Basically, when people are experiencing difficulty completing self-care tasks as a result of aging or chronic illness or disability, we can help provide assistance. And some of those assistance that we can provide are activities of daily living, such as eating, bathing, and dressing. Other daily activities such as preparing meals, managing medication, and housekeeping. That's not it. It's that's mainly some of the things we do, but there's also nursing facility care. You can be in an adult day program, their home health aid services, personal care, transportation, employment, and you can actually, if you're a family caregiver, you can actually be employed as well. To assist with your family member. So long-term service supports are delivered through an institutional, and home community-based setting. So in a nutshell, that's you can be in the community. It's not true. You don't have to be in a nursing home, or you can be in a nursing home. It depends on what's the best care that you need. All right. And so let's just go over a little bit about the main programs. Some of the Husky C programs. So Medicaid assistance for aged, blind, and disabled individuals. And these people are typically eligible for cash, but do not choose to receive the cash component. So basically, you'll get full Medicaid, and you'll be eligible for services like medical and transportation, medication, those things. Then another program, which a lot of people don't know about, is MedConnect. And it's basically, it's almost like it's the working disabled. We call it the working disabled program. It's like you can be disabled and you can work, and you can still receive the Medicaid. So that's an awesome thing because the asset limits are higher, the income limits are higher, things of that nature. I probably want to go back one. So for this program, the asset limit is $10,000 for an individual, $15,000 for a couple, which, as we know, some of the other ones, they're a little bit, they're a lot lower. You must be working at time of the application, but even if you lose employment, we have like a grace period. There's a year grace period where you can still receive the services or the Medicaid up into a year. And the amount that you can pretty much earn, you can earn up to $62.50. $6,250 monthly gross. And there's no minimum hours or income per month, so there's nothing that says you have to work at least 20 hours or something like that. But in this program, if your income is high, you may have to pay a premium. So that's that. No previous Medicaid, SSD, SSI, or AABD. Now those are all types of categories, like because SSD, SSI, those are determined from Social Security, and AABD is pretty much the medical coverage or the cash coverage determined by the Department of Social Services. But like we said, you must be found disabled. So either that would be through Social Security or through us. And only the applicant's income is counted towards eligibility, nobody else. So that's a good thing. Now, I'm just going to talk briefly about something that's a little sometimes confusing, of the spend down process. Sometimes when we're over when somebody is over the income limit, they go on what's called a spend down. And we are like one of very few states in the nation that even if you're over the income limit, we give you it's almost like a second chance program where you can still be eligible if you meet certain criteria. So spend downs occur, like we said, when a client's income is over the set limits to qualify for Medicaid assistance. The spend downs allow excess income to be reduced by spending down the excess by submitting medical bills in order to meet the program limit. So basically, how I like to explain it is it's almost like a deductible. So if you're over by a certain amount, you'll get a figure. They'll give you a spend down figure that basically says that this is the amount you're over. Now, how you meet that quote unquote deductible is with medical bills. So paying those bills is between you and your doctor or you and your provider, but we're not asking you to, like a real deductible where you have to pay a certain amount. You just have to show us, the Department of Social Services, that you have a certain amount of bills that meet that amount, and then we'll activate your medical. So it's really confusing, but they're done in 6-month increments, and that's basically it. So like I said, you can also be eligible for a 3-month retro period during that if you are active, your spend down is activated. And then, like I said, once the spend down is met, we'll cover medical expenses for that 6-month period, and then 6 months later you'll have to do it again. That's the only drawback. But I mean, it is a great program if you're over and you do have medical bills and you need the Medicaid. All right, so what now? So I'll have Carlene talk about some of the Medicaid versus Medicare, and we'll go through that.
Hi, my name is Carlene, as was already said. I'm from the Department of Social Services. I'm going to talk a little about Medicare versus Medicaid. Medicaid is a non-financial eligibility requirement. And types of coverage include nursing home versus home care. And there is a level of care, and then documentations that are needed are assets, income, and with the income there is an applied income when you're in the nursing home, as well as if you have home care, there is applied income to some of our clients that does have the home care. The income is limited, so you must have a set amount of income, which we'll talk about at another slide. And the community spouse, we also have a community spouse if someone's on Medicaid, that we consider the community spouse as well. And then there is rated housing. Medicare versus Medicaid. Medicare is a federally funded and administrated program for healthcare coverage, and Medicaid is jointly funded at the state and federal level, administered by the Department of Social Services. The LTSS, which is known as Long-Term Care Services and Support, non-financial eligibility requirements. Citizens or qualified non-citizens of the U.S. Residents of Connecticut, you must be a resident of Connecticut. You must be 65 or older, legally blind, and determined to have a disability by either Social Security or DSS via Colonial Cooperative Care. We have the home care versus the facility. The home care program, which is governed by Community Option, formerly known as Home and Community-Based Services. It provides an opportunity for Medicaid beneficiaries to receive a range of home health and non-medical services in their own home or community. For more information, you can contact the Community Option at 1-800-445-5394. I'm sorry.
And I also just want to say that is a toll-free number that you could call. But if you have questions about any of our waiver programs, so if you wanted to know, am I eligible? You know, what type of programs do the Community Options offer? Money follows the person, or anything type that has to revolve around home care, you can call that number. Someone will pick up and they'll be able to answer any of your questions that you may have. And you can also call our regular General Benefits Center first if you wanted to call. So just wanted to put that out there, that if you just even want to inquire about the services, you could do that.
And then we have the skilled nursing facility. The skilled nursing facility provides high level of medical care and custodial care in a licensed facility. And we call those boarding homes. Sometimes we hear the word group home. And so at times it's a little confusing, but it's a licensed facility. And a level of care is needed for our residents that is in a facility care. The level of care is needed before room and board can be granted. So before we pay for the client's room and board, they must have what we call a level of care, which is determined by another party as the nursing home submitted. Short term, you can have a level of short term level of care, which is longer than 30 days but less than 6 months. And then you can have a long term level of care, which is longer than 6 months. Then we have the home care. You have to have an assessment, a needed assessment done by Community Options. And most of them are out. We have Access Agency in the community that manage the assessments for our home care-based residents.
So then in that situation, somebody will come out to your house, they'll assess your needs to make sure that you meet the requirements so you can stay safely in the community. Because it's not the case where you just because you want to stay in the community that it's best for you to be there. So like Carlene said, the access agencies will come out, they'll do an assessment of your home and the needs that you require to see if you need care at home, or if you need to, or if it's better that you need a nursing home. And if they determine that you meet those requirements to stay home, then you get to stay home. So that's awesome.
And you have to meet at least one medical need.
like for your ADLs.
Yes. Required documentations, completion of our W1 LTC for application, or for the Husky C, a W1E. You have to have, if you have a power of attorney or conservator appointed, we will need a copy of that with the initial invention of all other accounts filed with the look back and guardianship. We also does accept the W-295 form, where someone will say that they need, a lot of times the nursing homes use this form to get information because if they're not listed, it's like giving us permission to speak to them. And then you must have proof of your medical insurance. And we require that because when someone's in a nursing home, we do give them a deduction for their medical insurance. And then we have to have proof of your gross income. A lot of times people think because it's deposited into their accounts that that is sufficient, but it's not sufficient. We must get the gross income amount, so we usually ask for either a copy of the actual stub of your pension or the 1099. And that depends on how far in the year that may be, because we do know that pension does change. So we do accept the 1099. And then we have a 5-year history of all assets. Assets could include your bank account, IRA, your life insurance. Generally, if you have a home, it may not be included. It can be excluded if you have a community spouse. And so annuities, if you have annuities, and with the life insurance, generally we look at the cash value, but we do need the face value and the cash value as well.
All right, so I'll talk a little bit about the general assets. Because for regular Husky C and long-term care, pretty much the asset limit is the same for both programs. It's $1,600, besides what we talked about before, MedConnect. That's a higher asset limit. That's $10,000, which is different. And but here, for the most part, it's $1,600 per individual, $2,400 for a couple that's living together. And again, like we said, here are the differences. Like for the working disabled, there are the different asset limits. All right, so for long-term care, so that's for when you're in a nursing home or for when you're in home care. The asset limit, like Carlene said earlier, it's 5 years look back. So what that means is we're going to go look back at we'll compile all. You have to submit all of your bank statements, all of your records of any assets going 5 days back from your institutionalization. So that's basically when you apply or when you need the services as, and we go 5 years back from that date. And for the most part, we request proof of 5 transactions, $5,000 or more. So the $500 here, $200 there, they're not really concerned about that. It's mainly, so if you make a transfer or you pay for something that's over $5,000, then that's pretty much what we're looking at, and you would have to provide verification of that at that time. And so we review any questionable transactions, so anything outside of pattern of spending. Not strictly above $5,000. So what that means is all of a sudden we're looking at your assets, your bank statement, we're going over your bank statements, and then there's these new transactions where all of a sudden somebody may give $10,000 here, $5,000 there. It's something like that wouldn't be in the normal spending pattern, so we take a look at that, and that's something that we question. Like Carlene said earlier, here are some examples of assets. People may not know that checking and savings, when we're saying that is an asset. but things, all your bank accounts, your IRAs, your annuities, savings bonds, life insurance policy. If you're, we'll talk about that, about excluded assets. Trusts, there are different type of trusts that you have. You would need verification like that. There's special needs trust, pooled trust, all types of things you can do, but we need verification of those. We need verification of vehicles, and if you have a burial contract. Again, we just put down at the bottom just to remind you again of what the asset limit is.
And just to add to that as well, the vehicle is excluded. One vehicle is excluded.
All right, so like we said, it's excluded assets. One vehicle, if the client or spouse needs the motor vehicle for the following. If you need it for employment, for medical treatment, has a modified vehicle for transportation. So that's basically it. So if one vehicle is not totally excluded, up to $4,500 of the fair market value can be excluded. So that's pretty much your next one. And then as well as your community spouse. So now for the irrevocable contracts, it used to be $5,400. They have raised the limit, so it's now $8,000 that you can have up to a contract. And burial space contracts limited to burial space items. So you can have an $8,000 contract, but then you can also have burial space items, which are like opening and closing of the casket, the grave marker, and so but they have to be on two separate policies. You can have up to $8,000 in irrevocable, but if you have burial space items, if you have any questions on like what burial space items, our policy is online and it gives you a whole list of what's considered a burial space item, because those items are different, or they can differ from what's in a regular contract. But usually if you go to any funeral home, they're very well versed on the requirements for Medicaid, and they'll be able to help you. Great thing about our cash surrender value for a life insurance policy with a face value of $1,500 or less. So if you have a life insurance policy that you've had since 1980, but the face value is $1,500, we don't even count the cash value for that. So any life insurance policies over that, under that amount, it's excluded. Anything over, it counts towards that whole $1,600 asset limit. So term policies, those are usually, there's very, very few, like 99.9% of term policies have no cash value, but there are some that do, but for the most part, we do not count those. You can have a revocable burial account up to $1,800, but typically we do not see a lot of those, because if you get a revocable, it reduces the amount you can have in your irrevocable. So a lot of people don't do it because there's restrictions and stuff. So we rarely see those, but they're still excluded if you have one for $1,800. Like Carlene said earlier, home property, if it's your primary residence, it is excluded. So, or if you're in the community, if you're living in your home, we do not make you put it up for sale or anything. The only time we would have you list your property for sale is if you don't have a spouse in the community, you've moved into a nursing home, and you've been there for more than 6 months, or if you're considered to be long-term care, and you'll be there, then we'll ask you as a requirement to put your house up for sale. So general income guidelines. Regular Husky C versus long-term care is a little bit different. So that's why we decided to, put those on there. Now the key is you must pursue all sources of income. So that's like pretty much a one that's pretty odd. Like, so if you're entitled a VA pension, or you're entitled this, if you want the Medicaid, you can't just say, hey, I don't want to get that because I want to be eligible for Medicaid. No, it's a requirement that you do pursue that income, and then we assess your situation at that point. But for regular Husky C, this is why some people are on a spend down, because here the income limits $633.49 for Region A, and Region B and C are $523.38. If anybody wanted to know what those regions are, they're just like portions of the state that are basically split up. But as you can see, the income limits are super low. So, but again, for Medicaid, for employees with disabled, the Working Disabled program is $75,000 a year that you can have for income. So the difference in long-term care is for community options and for skilled nursing, it's pretty much $2,250, but which is a lot higher, and that's gross. You would have to meet that gross income test to get that. But the difference with the income limits for community options, if you're over the $2,250, then you're not eligible for Medicaid. You would have to look into something else, like sort of like a pool trust to reduce your income. We partner with the Plan of Connecticut, which is a company in which we allow you to send your money there. They pay bills for you. It's like roughly $100 to maintain a month. But the great thing is if the Medicaid is more important to you, a lot of people utilize that to reduce their income to be eligible for the Medicaid, because the Medicaid covers a lot if you're in need. When you're in a skilled nursing facility, it's $2,250, but there really is technically no limit. And the reason why there's no limit is because you're paying your money to the nursing home. So you're paying towards your cost of care. So if you have like $5,000 of income, you know what I mean, you'll still be eligible. You'll get your room and board covered. It's just that because you're paying towards your care. And these two categories, like L01 and L99, that's just pretty much for our purposes. Both of them you're still eligible for in a nursing home. All right, so patient liability. So how I look at patient liability, is it you, Carlene, or is it me?
Yes, it's
Okay. She'll talk about it. We just wanted to mix it up a little bit, you know.
So the patient liability is when a client resides in a facility, it's formally called applied income. And so the amount of personal income that is used towards the cost of care, that's what we call the applied income, or now it's called patient liability. I'm still accustomed to saying applied income. And so the patient liability amount is due in the month in which the individual had 30 consecutive days of long-term care occurs. The patient liability deductions that are allowed in the following order. The client receives a personal need allowance, which is $60. And then if there is a community spouse, there's a community spousal allowance, which is generally calculated by the worker. We have a form that we plug in different things, but it's based on the client's, the community spouse needs, which is whether they have a mortgage and insurance and taxes, or if they pay rent, then and also that community spouse income, gross income. We always take the gross income. And then there is a community family allowance. That also is calculated based on a need of whether there's children in the home, and then we do the calculation based on the income of the community spouse or the parent in the community, and the need of the children. It's just calculated based on our scale of different things. Expenses that not subject to the third-party payment are Medicare and other health insurance premium, deductibles, or co-insurance charges. Medical and re-medical care recognized under the state law but not covered under the state Medicaid plan. So in other words, this is one of the deductions, which is your medical premium, your medical insurance. If you have a private medical medical insurance, we do allow you to keep it. A lot of times people say, should we drop it? But we don't encourage anyone to drop it. It's totally up to the individual, because what we will do if you pay, as whatever you pay for it, we'll give it back out of your patient liability. It'll be deducted out of that. And then maintaining the home in the community for 6 months only. We should talk about the property that may be excluded. If the client is not living in the property, but is in a nursing home, the property is excluded for 6 months. So you could be in a nursing home for 6 months and we won't say to you, go and sell it. But once you pass that 6 months, you have to have you have to sell the property and use that money towards your care or spend on that money. Up to $400 is for living with someone else, or up to $650 for living alone. So we call this rental diversion. So if you're only going to be there for 6 months or less, you are allowed to have like what we call a rental diversion. And it could be $400 if you live with someone, or $650 if you live alone, up to $650 if you live alone.
And I just wanted to explain something to you, like, that makes it a little bit easier. So for easy math purposes, how it works, so like people can understand, because sometimes when people go into a nursing home, they have a hard time letting go of their income or understanding how things work. So it's roughly $12,000 a month on average to house somebody in a nursing home per month. So, and that's for their room and board and everything. So if the client has, let's say, $1,060 in income per month, we allow them, as the federal limit is, we allow them $60 personal needs, like we said, amount they can keep every month. And so that's for like if they want to go to the hairdresser, if they want to, buy anything or something like that, because all their needs, their food, everything is being met in a nursing home, so that's why the amount is so low. So the $60 they'd be able to keep. The $1,000 the client would pay to the nursing home, and us as a Department of Social Service would send an $11,000 check to meet the whole bill. So that's sort of how it works. But that's at private pay. But so pretty much there's a Medicaid rate that's a little bit lower. It's pretty much like anywhere between like six, depending on the nursing home, $6,000 and $8,000 maximum for the Medicaid rate. But that's how it works. It's like you pay a portion towards the cost of your care, so it's a little bit easily more explained.
One quick thing in regard to that as well, when we talk about the rental diversion, that if the client is there, they also have to have a level of care that says they were there for short term, or they can get, if the level of care is not short term, they can also get a letter from their doctor stating that the intent is for them to go back into the community. The patient liability for individual receiving community options, formerly known as home care community-based services. Patient liability amount deductions is 200% of the poverty level, or the MNIL for one person for those who are eligible under the model waiver. We have a community spousal allowance, and then we also have a community family allowance. Expenses not subject to the third-party payments are Medicare and other health insurance premiums, deductions, co-insurance charges, medical and re-medical care recognized under the state law but not covered under the state Medicare plan. Community spouse. A community spouse is an individual who is married to someone who is living and applying for the community option services or services received in a nursing home and is not receiving or applying for those services themselves. As of the first date of institutionalized, a lot of times we will say the DOI, that's what DOI stands for, date of institutionalization. The assets are divided in half. The individual's asset limit is $1,600. So the person who's applying for Medicaid, their asset limit is $1,600. The community spouse is allowed to keep half of the assets. The minimum amount to retain is $24,720,000, and the maximum amount to be retained is $123,600. That's as of the 1st of January this year. This is known as the Community Spouse Protected Amount, the CSPA. A summary. Medicare is a federally funded and administrated program for health care coverage. Medicaid, also known as Title 19, is jointly funded at the state and federal level and is administrated by the Department of Social Services. Eligibility members meet the federal definition of age, disability, and blindness. Two types of coverage: nursing home versus the home care. The various forms and documents required. We have an asset limit and the type of assets, income limits and applied income, and we have the community spouse. We also have rated housing, other living arrangement options, residential care home or rated housing facility, also known as boarding homes. The state supplement program is to aid to the aged, blind, and disabled, better known as AABD. They get cash assistance for individuals that are age 65 and older, or disabled 18 to 64, has SSA and DSS disability determination by Colonial Cooperative Care. Or you can be legally blind, have a source of income to supplement. And I'm going to turn the other part over to.
Okay. So basically, with cash assistance, you can have it in, it's both of them. You can have it in the community setting, just regular at your home. If you meet the requirements, basically, if you have to have income to supplement. So, like it says, so if your rent is like $1,200 a month, and you have low income, the state may give you a portion to pay towards that. Same thing with being in a nurse in a rated housing or boarding home per se. There's some boarding homes that are like $5,000 a month, like New Horizons or something like that, or there's boarding homes in your community, and us as a state, we'd pay a portion of that, would send a check to them, and the same sort of thing how it works, how we explained earlier with the nursing home. They pay a portion of their income to stay in that. Their meals and rating housing, your meals and everything are included as that as well. So you can't apply for food stamps and stuff like that. The only thing that you could really apply for is cash assistance. So just the overall application process again, you can apply online via our DSS website, www.connect.ct.gov. Now that is actually the prime way that we really pushing, or that to be awesome to apply, because when you apply online, now you can look at your notices. If there's a notice that went out, you can check that. You can do your own budget sheets. You can upload documents. You can do redeterminations. There's so many things you can do online, and it's timestamped. You'll get you'll get a submission ID, so there's no more it got lost in the mail or something. Like, if you have that submission ID, we'd be able to pull up your document. So that's an awesome thing. But you can still do it via mail or W01E to the appropriate application center. It depends on what it is. So you could send, if you're applying for home care, I would just say the W1LTC that we talked about earlier, that's only sent to the Hartford office, and it's 20 Meadow Road, and that's for home care. They do the whole state. They do all of the applications for home care, and then there's 3 other application centers: one in Waterbury, one in New Haven, and one in Bridgeport, and they do all of the other nursing home and cash applications. So if you needed any information, you'd go to www.ct.gov/DSS. These 2 are pretty much our key websites that you can go to. But like I said, here's the general benefits in the line. If you have any questions regarding any of our programs, all you have to do is call. And so, like we said, the same thing. It's more of a repeat. For cash, it's a little bit different. Cash programs, the asset look back is actually 2 years. It's not the full 5 years, like for if you're going in a nursing home or in home care. But it's the same thing. The proof of the income, your private medical insurance, and it's not a requirement for your private medical insurance, but like Carlene said, we give you deduction for it. So it would be awesome if you submit it so that we can reduce your countable income. Proof of citizenship or identity. The difference with going into a residential care home or boarding home is there's something called a W-265. It's just a form that the boarding home submit to us that says, hey, we admitted this person, or hey, we discharged this person. So that's all it is. And then the same thing if you're conserved, or if you're a power of attorney or a guardianship, you want to submit those documents so that people can be able to sign on behalf of you. So same things, some of the same requirements for the cash programs are asset, bank accounts, investment accounts, life insurances. So they're pretty much, everything is pretty much the same. It's just, we just put it up there, so just if there's any questions about, hey, is this included for cash, or if it's not, but it is. All right, so basically gathering information, like we said, you would be, the burden of proof is on the client to gather the information that we need, or if there's a power of attorney, conservator, anybody associated can help get the information. If they're having trouble, we do have a form which we can send. So if they're saying, hey, this bank is not responding or something like that, I've sent something out, or they told me they want to charge me this amount of money for the records, then we can send something to them as Department of Social Services. We can send something to the insurance companies and to the financial institutions to get asset verification. But if it doesn't come back to us, again, the burden of proof is on the client or the authorized representative. So that's just something. So one of the last things we'll talk about is renewals. Renewals are typically done 12 months, every 12, so this is basically for medical and cash programs. Every 12 months, renewals are due. Spend downs in cash are every 6 months. And it's cash with wages, we should have put that, clarified. That's really what is every 6 months, because if you're on a regular cash program, it is 12 months as well. And they can be done online, by mail, or in person. And the same thing, the gross income and assets must be verified at every renewal. The good thing is that we're not looking at the whole 5 years or the whole 2 years. It's just strictly what your current situation is. So once we look at all this, so that's a misconception that some people may have, is that once they submit it, they got to submit all these documents again, but pretty much that's all it is. is once you submit once you're granted, it'll be that year or that 6 months down, you provide your current bank statement, your current income. There's certain things that if they've already been provided, you don't have to provide again, like a burial contract. If there's no change or something, you don't have to provide that. Or if it's been verified that your income, like say for example, you receive a pension and you get a letter that says, hey, this pension does not change, we'll accept that and you don't have to provide that verification. So that's basically it. Anybody have any questions?
When you were talking about the level of care and going into a long-term facility, and you said there's, how does this state or whatever determine that level of care going into a long-term?
Okay, so it's actually a pretty extensive process. So once a client comes to a nursing home, they send the hospital sends all of their records, and at the facility there's a team of doctors, nurses, physical therapists. They basically do the assessment there, and so they write down like, okay, this client there should be, or this patient needs this much rehab, or they need this much care, or they should be long-term. It's them. They compile a whole package and they submit it to what we call a third-party company that we use called Ascend, and that's where it yields. They'll look over. It's a team of doctors and nurses. It's not us that determines the level of care. So it's basically, trained medical professionals that determine if a client is short-term or if they'd be long-term. But that's just based on the assessment that they have. It doesn't mean that you're like a slave to it, or that, that's like the end all. So sometimes somebody may get long-term care, long-term approval, and they'll go back home. It's not necessarily, it's just based on the assessment of the doctors and the nurses and the physical therapists at that time to see what they would qualify for, and then once that's sent to us, then that's how long we typically pay for.
And also, if someone could have a level of care long-term, and we do have a community-based called Money Follow the Person, and they'll go in and assess the client and work with the family or the client to get the client back in the community.
Yeah, so it's not set in stone that a lot of people, or sometimes they'll get long-term approval, and but typically families want to bring their family members home, or stuff like that. So it's like I said, it's just not set in stone. But as far as the level of care, we don't determine that. It's done by doctors and nurses.
And also, once they go home, they can have the community-based services in their home, and there is not a second look back. It's the same requirement, so they'll just go home. The facility social worker generally may make the referral, or sometimes the family can do it themselves, and then the Access Health Agency will go and assess the client right in the home to see whether or not their safety is eligible to meet the home care program as well.
And pretty much, home care is awesome because there's some people who receive 24-hour care at home. It's cheaper to, it's pretty much cheaper to have you in your own home. You're buying your own groceries. You're paying your own utility bills and stuff like that. So as long as the state sees that it's more beneficial, we want to keep you home, comfortable in your own setting, your own environment. As long as it has to make sense, financially for us. As long as that is met, then you can go home. Well, thank you for having us. And if you have any questions, you can always just follow up and we'll provide you any answers that you need. But thank you.